Welcome to the training of the spacer workflow, one of the most intricate and important parts to move a home forward on the solar journey. This video will cover how the approach works, the tech and tools to accomplish the task, and the best tips and tricks to make doing this part of the process a breeze. Let's get started. First, let's begin by understanding why an account would require a service panel change request. Typically, there are two primary reasons for upgrading the electric service panel on the side of the house. The first reason is that the existing panel doesn't meet the electricity requirements necessary for the installed solar system. In most cases, the current electric panel is too small. The second reason is when the electric panel has been installed in a location that violates building codes. For instance, if it is placed too close to a gas line or other equipment that the city inspectors deem unacceptable. The panel upgrade needs are identified by either the site surveyor, who checks the size and space around the home's current panel, or the designer, who does calculations to ensure the service panel can handle the electricity needed for the solar system and meets the requirements. Once it's determined by either of those two that a service panel change is needed, we have to contact the utility company and request permission to make the necessary changes. This process is called a spacer. This is where you come in. Utility companies usually don't make it easy for people when it comes to going solar. It's not that they don't want to help or that it's terrible, but when someone switches to solar and upgrades their panel, the utility company loses a paying customer. So our first challenge is to make sure we keep pushing them to move things forward. We do this by submitting a request, following up after we've submitted it, and sending any extra stuff they ask for to the right person who can handle it. Once we've done all that, we let the utility company know that we've got everything they needed. So your job has three parts: submit, follow up, and direct. Let's break down each of these steps and see how to do them. To submit a request, you'll find it on your dashboard in bucket 5A called Spacer Awaiting Submission to Utility. The requests are sorted from oldest to newest, so we handle them in that order. Click on the View Spacer button on the far right to open a window. In the top right corner of this window, you'll see a pencil icon. Click on that to start the submission process. First, you'll see the name of the utility company at the top. Each utility company has its own way of submitting a spacer. Some have an online process, while others require a phone call to a general number. Your team lead will provide you with step-by-step instructions for each utility. Before clicking anything on this screen, open a separate window and follow the process outlined by your team lead on the utility company's website or through a phone call. Once you've completed the submission process with the utility company, in the bottom left, you'll see the section titled Request Submission with a checkbox that says Submitted. Clicking on this will timestamp your completion and reveal the next section called Request Confirmation. Note that another section, Utility Follow-up, will also appear after submitting. By default, it sets a follow-up reminder for 7 days in the future. If the utility has given you a specific time frame for their response, you can update this field. Otherwise, it's best to leave it at the 7 days so the system can remind us to follow up in a week. We'll explain how this fits into the rest of your process in just a moment. Once the utility confirms that they have received our request, you'll proceed to the Request Confirmation section and check the box labeled Confirmed. By doing this, two new sections, Utility Assessment and Spacer Complete, will appear below the follow-up section. In the Request Confirmation section, you will notice a field for the utility tracking number. This number is usually provided by the utility company and is used for reference within their system. It's important to try your best to obtain this number from the utility company. Remember how we mentioned earlier that utility companies aren't exactly thrilled about moving things forward? Well, once you've submitted the request in their system, it's really up to them to complete the assessment and inform us about the next steps. In many cases, this is where things can get lost and forgotten. But not anymore. Thanks to our new and improved automated tracking system, you can sit back and relax. The system takes charge of communication with the utility company by requesting updates each week. After reaching out to the utility company for an update, we auto-update the customer as well, even if it is just to let them know that we've followed up. So, you don't have to worry. Our system keeps you, the utility, and the customer informed with the latest and greatest news. Here we see, did the utility provide additional details about the assessment? If you click yes, 3 additional questions will appear. The first question is, where will the utility perform their assessment? This is about whether the utility company will send someone to the house for the assessment or if it will be done remotely. The second question is, did the utility provide a date for the assessment? This is used when the utility company gives a specific date for the assessment. If they provide a range of dates, always put in the latter date. Lastly, the third question is, did the utility provide their planner contact information? This is for when the utility company gives you a name, phone number, or email address to contact their planner. Note that if you can obtain an email address, the system will automatically communicate follow-ups through email, saving you time and manual tracking. It's highly recommended you try your best to get an email address to enable the automatic communication. It's so much easier that way. All of this is tracked in our dashboard under bucket 5B called SPCR Awaiting Follow-Up with Utility. When an account goes past the follow-up date, it appears in this bucket. Imagine this bucket like a skillet on a stove cooking a perfect pancake. It should never sit for too long and must be watched, ready to flip and serve. By the end of each day, there should be no jobs left in this bucket. To follow up, simply make a phone call to the utility company and check in. There are 3 things that could happen. They might provide a follow-up date, give an update without a specific date, or not answer the call. If you receive an update without a date or no answer to the call, click the follow-up button on the right side. It removes it from your list because it updated the record for 7 days from today, and you'll be notified when it's time for the next follow-up. If you get a specific date, click on the View SPCR button. This takes you to the SPCR record. Now click the Add Follow-Up button. Now click on the pencil in the top right, and then add the specific date you received in there. With our new system, we've made it easier to keep the ball in the utility company's court while we wait for their response. If during the process they unexpectedly reach out via email or phone call with partial information before completing their assessment, you can always return to the SPCR record to fill in any gaps or update your answers accordingly. For instance, let's say the utility company initially didn't provide an exact date, but shared the name and email address of a planner. You would fill out the contact information and leave the date blank. If a few days later we receive a phone call or email from them with a specific date, you can revisit the record and update the date accordingly. This allows us to maintain flexibility and ensure that our records are up to date as we progress. The beauty of this system is that it tracks the entire duration it spends in the hands of the utility company. As long as we have a follow-up date provided by them, we won't bother them unless that date has passed. If they don't provide a date, we will perform a weekly check-in to gauge the progress. Regardless of the scenario, Whether a date is given or not, we always update the customer every week. This could be a reminder that we are waiting on the utility company, or if we have a specific date, it's a countdown of the days until the utility takes care of their part. Moving on to closing out a spacer. Once the utility completes their assessment, we navigate to the utility assessment section. Here we find the checkbox labeled Assessment Received. Clicking on this will prompt the question, does the utility require any additional items to complete the spacer, such as relocation or trenching? If the answer is yes, it means one of the following 4 scenarios occurred during the assessment. 1, the utility company will need to send someone else on their end. 2, the utility company requires something from us that our internal operations team must handle, such as providing a photo or document. 3, the utility company needs us to perform a task at the customer's house, such as tree removal or moving an object to complete the assessment. Or 4, the assessment report indicates that trenching or panel relocation is necessary. To address these scenarios, we have the Assessment Items section, which can be accessed by clicking the gray button that says Add Spacer Item. Clicking on it takes us to a new page where we can enter a description of the issue that needs resolution and select the party responsible for resolving it. After saving and closing, the assessment item will be added to the list. You cannot move forward until we resolve all assessment issues. Once they have been resolved, the Spacer Completed section will appear with a checkbox labeled Complete. If none of the aforementioned assessment issues were needed, the Spacer Completed section will also appear. Once you click the checkbox, it will prompt you to fill in the required field of the spacer report. Additionally, you have the option to add an image, sketch, and miscellaneous file, as well as any closing notes. After adding this information, you can save and close the record. And voila, you're done. A Disco Rico will be auto-created for the field team to schedule and handle accordingly. We're thrilled to streamline this process, making everything much easier. Now, you only have 3 buckets to monitor, 1 for submissions, 1 for follow-ups, and 1 for directing additional items needed to the right people and making sure they get done. By updating dates and obtaining email addresses, everything will be automated for you. So let's get out there and make our turn times fly.